Welcome to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher, where we take you behind the scenes with peak performers to learn what makes them tick and discover how you can apply their lessons to your life. I'm your host, Molly Fletcher. Meet Alex Guerrero, the man behind Tom Brady's success, known as Tom's body coach. Their partnership has spanned more than 15 years and 3 Super Bowl titles. Alex works with Tom to prepare him both physically and mentally for the grind of the football season. Every year they set out a 3-year vision and goals and outline the process to get there. In 2013, Alex and Tom co-founded TB12 on the belief that everyone can benefit from a more holistic approach to health and wellness. They currently operate TB12 performance and recovery centers in Boston, Foxborough, and Tampa. Our conversation today is all about how to sustain peak performance. We dig into winning mindset, recovery techniques, and get a unique look inside the mindset of one of the greatest athletes of all time. If you want to feel and perform your best, this one's for you. Here's my conversation with Alex Guerrero. Alex, thanks so much for joining. This is going to be fun. I want to start by pulling, back the curtains on one of the greatest athletes of all time, right? And a client of yours, a partner of yours who clearly needs no introduction, Tom Brady. Tell what's your relationship with Tom?
Oh, well, Tom and I, let's see. We've been together for about 16 years now, working together. It's grown over the course of years. Not only is he my best friend, but he's been such an inspiration to me, and he's demonstrated great leadership to me. He's taught me so much about, leadership and winning mindset. And I think together with what and how we operate and how we go about performing and getting ready to perform, we've really fed off each other over the course of these last 16 years. And it's really grown into a very special relationship.
What makes Tom so unique, right? What separates him from everybody else?
I've worked with a lot of, high-class, high-profile athletes from all over the world. And, it's interesting. What really makes him unique is he is so extremely well-rounded. Like, he really understands that. I think what comes with leadership is humility, right? He's extremely humble. He's very disciplined. He's very positive. It's very unique when you have an athlete that's, at his level, his profile, to be able to maintain that type of personality and those behavior traits. He really works hard at lifting those up around him and, giving credit where credit's due, and he takes the blame where he has to take the blame. And it's really wonderful to see him operate. And I think that's very unique for an athlete of his profile, I think.
How do you get your clients to rethink how to train, how to prepare, right? Because in many ways, I know you're asking them to do a lot of sort of unlearning.
Yeah, I think, Molly, like a lot of the things that you've talked about and that you do so well at teaching others to do, it really starts with a winning mindset. I think that's kind of the core of it, right? Like, you have to have the determination and drive to be your best self. I think like any muscle, really, your mind can be trained to be tougher and more resilient in order to accomplish the seemingly impossible. And so, a lot of it is mental fitness, and that's a lot of where we start. And then, of course, we branch out and we get into, working on the body through our pliability treatments. And then we add, amplifiers into our training through hydration and proper sleep and meditation. And we've always believed and felt that if we can incorporate those things from a holistic perspective, that we can then encourage the body to do just about anything you're really asking it to do. I don't believe that the brain really understands time or understands limits. It just understands what you tell it. So, if you don't think you can accomplish something, or when an athlete gets to be in professional athletics, for example, or they get to be a certain age and everyone around them is telling them like, oh, you're getting a little long in the tooth. Like, it's time for, you to start cutting back or doing less or, thinking about, what you should be doing in the future. And winding down your career. I never really believed that idea. I always thought as athletes age, or even as people age, like they just have so much more life experience and so much more knowledge that I thought, wow, if we could just get the body to keep up with the mind, if I could get Tom's body, for example, just to keep up with his mind, like the game is slowing down for him. The older he gets, there's not a defense he probably hasn't seen, right? There isn't a film he probably hasn't been able to study, so he knows how to do all those things extremely well. So I thought if I can just get his body to perform at the level that his brain was already at, his brain would go like, okay, this is normal behavior and this is what we do and this is how we do it. So being able to accomplish what he's done at 40 and 41, at 42, at 43, and now, we're going into his age at 44, I think that we're really not going to see drop off this year either. I think we're going to be able to perform like we've always performed. Well, he just looks like Tom Brady. And so our clients, we kind of treat them the same way. Like I believe that you should be able to do what you love doing for as long as you want to do it, whatever that is. And so I just think that to be able to do that, though, you have to be able to, you have to put in the work. If rest and recovery is important for your job, you have to get that in. If treatment is important for your job, you got to get that in. If eating right and hydrating is important, you got to get that in. And then, of course, it all starts with the winning mindset. You just have to believe you can.
Sure. Take me a little bit behind the curtain of preparation, right? You talked about mental, you talked about the body, you talked about some of the amplifiers, you talked about the way to tell your body the right things, what you need it to do. Get me kind of inside of that a little bit behind the curtain as it relates to the preparation to do that, right? In other words, what does that look like?
When it starts with the desire to do it, we always think that our whole, who we really are, I don't believe that you have to be a pro athlete to want to feel like one. The reason why we started this in the first place is to really empower anyone to perform their best and really to live pain-free. I think it's difficult in today's day and age to perform your best if you have some form of pain. And I think even for business executives, and we have a lot of them as clients, and they're high-profile executives. And, when they have some form of pain, whether it's, neck pain or back pain or hip pain or whatever it is, it impacts their ability to do their job at 100%. And so anyone to perform their best and live pain-free, you need to start to incorporate some of the principles that we teach. And so I think for us, it really starts there. And it goes on to when we have clients come in, for example, one of the first things we ask them to do is really define, what their future life looks like. What is it that you want to accomplish? Not what you think you can at the moment. What is it that you want to do? For example, we had a couple people come in and they were business partners for years and they were in their 80s. And one of their goals was to ride, go to France and ride the Tour de France circuit on their bicycles. And I thought, God, that's such a bizarre, you guys are in your 80s. You've accomplished so much in your professions and now you want to do what? And they're like, that's what we want to do. And we're like, okay, well, let's get you ready to do it. Well, so we put them on a program and took them through it. And they actually did it. It took them, 4 months later, they came walking back in and they had accomplished it. And they shared amazing stories about their experience together. And so that's what we want to hope to be able to inspire to do is really accomplish whatever they want to accomplish and not really what they think they can, but what they want to do.
Alex, I would imagine, right, the way in which Tom approaches in-season training, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, is different at some level, right? Potentially physically and mentally in the off season, right? So the in-season maybe looks a little bit different than the off season. I think there's so many business people in the world feel like right now it is in season and it is like Super Bowl every week, right? As far as the magnitude of sort of burnout and the approaching burnout. I mean, I heard somebody say you're either in burnout or you're approaching burnout. I would imagine, right, the way you train Tom and your other athletes in season is different than off season. What advice would you have for people that feel like, but man, I'm always in season, right? So what do I do? How do I deal with that?
What we do during the course of the season is to be able to find center or find balance. I think that if you're too high, it's not a good thing. If you're too low, it's not a good thing. Right? You just got to always kind of be set, find your balance. And when you feel yourself getting out of balance, you've got to develop tools to get yourself back there. So I think that's where meditation comes in for us. That we try to teach all of our business executives, how to meditate during live action. For example, let's say you are in, a high pressure meeting and you feel like you're getting out of center, like the meeting is getting away from you. You don't feel like you're quite tapped in energetically with the people that you're trying to speak with. And so we give them tools so that through live action, they can calm themselves down, come back to center, so they're not in that fight or flight mode, because it's very difficult to concentrate and focus when you're in that space. So we do it with our athletes and we do it with our executive clients to try to help them find that center so they can be calm. And again, I call it getting into rhythm. Like I can tell when Tom's out of rhythm, and I'll tell him, Tom, you got to find center. You got to get back into rhythm. You're just a little out of rhythm. And he knows exactly what that means, and he knows how to get himself there. And so I think some little code words and things that people can use for themselves to identify when they're out of center to be able to come right back there and accomplish what they need to do. Because I think that if you feel good, you play good. And for a business executive, feeling good, your outcome's going to be good.
It's one thing to get to the NFL and play there for a couple of years, right? It's another thing to get there and play there for 5 years. It's another thing to get there and stay there. It's another thing to have 7 Super Bowls and 5 Super Bowl MVPs, right? I mean, if you had to identify the keys, right, the real key linchpins to Tom's longevity, what would those be?
Well, I would say the number one thing is our ability to maintain pliability, right, which is his muscle to be able to stay long and unrestricted through movement, and to be able to support and sustain the impacts that he takes as a result of his sport and position. And then I would say the other thing is really desire. Like Tom still really loves football. And I think really when you do what you're doing it because you love it, right? And I think the reason why people fall out of love with something is because it's just painful. And it takes a lot of work, and it's hard, and it's painful. And so they just fall out of love with it. So, the way that we work to prepare Tom to be able to stay in love with the game is to make sure that his body is always feeling really good. So he doesn't have any pain. He's never in pain. So as a result, he loves to go throw the perfect spiral. You'll hear him mention that, because I just love going on the field and I want to throw the perfect spiral. And that's what he's working towards. So I just want to make sure that his body is always in the position for him to be able to go out and perform his best and to do his best. So those are the things that we do to prepare. We work on our mindset all the time. It's a daily thing. Right? We work on our amplifiers every single day. We're making sure our hydration is what it needs to be. We make sure that our nutrition is what it needs to be. We make sure that we get the right amount of rest that we need to be. And then we're always doing our pliability treatments on a daily basis. I believe that everything really starts with feeling good.
Yeah, no question. How do you and Tom approach goal setting?
We talk about it quite a bit. So we communicate really well, and we're communicating all the time. I think what we've learned over the course of 16 years together is that we set goals, and we've tried to set them at, 3 years ahead. So I always ask Tom, what does it look like 3 years from now? And we try to set these goals, and every year we just add on another year to our goals. And that doesn't mean that we, hit every single one of them, because we know that through the course of the year, there's diversions, right? You have to, bob and weave and duck and jump and turn left when you thought you were going to turn right. And that's just life. And those things happen. And so we know that that's a reality of life. So we don't allow ourselves to get stressed out when a plan really doesn't go the way we anticipated it, because we kind of pre-anticipate that there are going to be issues. So we try to train for as many variables as possible. We do a lot of cognitive exercises to try to train for that, so that when something happens that we didn't anticipate, we don't get ourselves and find ourselves out of center. We still try to maintain center so we're not really stressed out. So we're not getting too high.
Sure. You don't take the John McEnroe approach.
Yeah.
I know you're a tennis guy. I've played tennis too. So
I'm a tennis guy, and I love John. He's phenomenal. He's so fun to watch.
I do too. But I mean, talk about highs and lows, right? Oh yeah. No, I love him too.
But yeah, that wouldn't be our approach.
Right. I get it. I mean, he had a lot of success. That was his thing. But why do you think complacency, right, never creeps in for Tom? And how do you maintain that level of drive when you've achieved so much, right? I mean, and I believe there's such a difference between achievement and fulfillment, and that's a bit of that question. But how do you offset complacency inside of that?
Yeah, we really never look in the rearview mirror. We are always looking forward. We're always moving forward, and we're looking forward. So, the success of last season was last season. And as they'll tell me, like, hey, we're on the next year, bud. We got to move forward. This is going to be a new year with new life experiences, new things to learn and to grow from and to take in and absorb. And so we embrace those opportunities. It isn't like we're not fulfilled. we certainly have fulfillment. I think we wake up and find joy every day. And I think that's an important thing for us. Like, we're looking to find joy, and we're looking for things that bring us joy, because again, we're trying to find, a balance in our day, because there's some things that are going to occur that aren't so joyous. But we never look in the rearview mirror. We're always looking forward to the next thing.
Sure. 3-minute rule, right? Celebrate for 3 minutes and let's go.
That's right.
There's another Super Bowl to go win.
Exactly.
When you started working with Tom, what were some of the things quickly that you changed from a nutrition, from a hydration, from a mental training perspective, the amplifiers? Maybe you can high level some of the things that immediately you said, wait, we got a problem, we got to tweak it.
Yeah. One of the things certainly was changing a little bit of the way that he worked out. So that was one of the things. And once we changed the way he was working out, we then started to add more pliability into his, regimen. Again, I said, Tommy, our muscles got to be long and they've got to be unrestricted. Or there's no way you're going to be able to continue to move as you age over the course of time the way that you want to, right? You're going to lose arm strength. You're going to lose, it's going to happen if you don't begin to change these things now. The beautiful thing about Tom is that he wasn't afraid of getting worse before he got better. And I think that's one of the things that was really impressive to me. Like, he'd already won, 3 Super Bowls, and, he could have been like Alex, like, I've already won 3 Super Bowls. Like, there's nothing you can really teach me that I don't already know. He wasn't like that. Like, he was so, open and willing to try. And when he saw the results of trying, he thought, okay, this is going to be great. This is going to be really good for me. So over the course of time, I started to do more. So really kind of a principle at a time. I didn't throw everything at him at one time, because that's just too much. But I said, okay, now we need to start adding, hydration. Like, we need to get you to hydrate a little bit better. And I want you hydrating with these things, because we need to nurture and nourish your soft tissues this way. And then after that, I said, okay, now we need to look at your diet. Let's look at this and try to make it more of a 80-20 rule. And let's see if we can follow that. And, oh, by the way, now we need to get this much sleep in. And so with each new amplifier that we added, I just was able to explain to him the value that he was going to be getting out of each of those amplifiers. And I think with people that are really high performing, whether they're executives or athletes, their time is valuable. So they understand value. So they just want value for value. And when they understand that they're going to get X for putting in Y, it's really easy for them to grasp. And that's how we did it with Tom. So it was kind of line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. And pretty soon he just started to take it all in. Now he does it all.
Yeah, for a guy who was a 6th round of the 199th pick in the draft, I mean, it's an unbelievable story, right? Of no question putting in the work and believing. In addition to meditation, what are some of the things that you do to work on the mental approach? Because you talked about it, and I believe it too, right? The mind is remarkably powerful. What are 2 to 3 things that you would say when you say, hey, get back to center, Tom, or for your clients? What are the 2 to 3 things that they default to pretty quickly inside of stressful moments to get them recentered?
We always talk about what the game plan is going to look like before we actually get to the game, right? What's a perfect pass look like? What does this ball look like? What does that look like? What does this game look like? So, we always have the idea of really what we want the outcome to be before we start. And if things aren't well, we just shift right back to the outcome. The other thing is that we write down what the outcomes we want are. Like, I think that what the eye sees, the brain remembers, the body does. So, for example, I really don't like him focusing on negative plays. Picks are going to happen, right? It's professional sports. Like, not everything is going to go great. I just don't ever allow him to focus on those things. Like, let me go back and review why I threw this pick a million times. Like, to me, I'm like, oh, Tommy, like, what your eye sees, your brain remembers, the body does. Your brain doesn't really know good or bad, right or wrong. It just knows what you teach it. So I have all of our clients always focus on the positive aspect of a negative situation, because I believe that for the negative to exist, there has to be a positive element. So, for example, if I'm working with, a running back, and I say, let's say it's 3rd and 3, all right, 3rd down, 3 yards to go. How many yards do you need to get for a first down? I can always know exactly where that athlete's mindset is if he says, well, I need 3 yards. Or if he says, I need 5 yards. Like, I was working with a high profile guy. He says, I need 5 yards. So he just already began to visualize that every time he got the ball, he was going to get 5 yards. And it's interesting. He played 11 years in the league. And when you look at his average, he averaged 5.4 yards a carry. So that's really how we look at it preparing. Like you have a plan, like you focus on your plan. And once you get out of center, things aren't going right in your plan. You just got to go right back to visualize what you wanted in your plan to begin with. Does that make sense?
100%. And when you think about, not focusing on the negative, right? Not rewatching those picks over and over and over again. How do you correlate that, though, with recovery, right? Because we know the best athletes in the world recover fast from the picks, right? From the losses, from the tough moments. What's the correlation between recognizing that there was a problem, a negative moment, if you will, and then tying that to the recovery piece?
That's a great question. I would say that, again, if you're thinking of recovery from the perspective of the way that you feel, is that what you're asking?
The way that you feel and the way that you react, the way that you then turn to perform to identify the outcome that you wanted most, to lean into the outcome that you wanted most.
Yeah, I think it's just acknowledging and understanding that, look, things happen. Like, you can't control the outcome of every situation, right? There's always other people that are involved, other people who've made a decision that might impact the decision you were wanting to make, or things just happen. So again, it's trying to find the positive in the negative and really focusing on that and going, okay, like this happened, this wasn't great, but one, what can we learn from it? And two, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? So I think that's where communication comes into play. Like, especially in a team environment, like it's never really any single person's issue. It's always a team issue, right? So, I think the ability to communicate effectively with somebody, to have sometimes adult conversations and really a form of game planning, if you will, with whether it's, a colleague at work or, somebody on your team at work that didn't go great. And, how do you continue to motivate and inspire them and have the group kind of take the responsibility of what went wrong rather than the individual taking responsibility for what went wrong? So those are the things that we talk about it all the time. So Tom and I talk about how valuable and important communication is.
In just a minute, we'll get back to the conversation. But first, I want to share a free resource for you. Through this podcast, I've had the opportunity to connect with more than 100 leaders, championship coaches, elite athletes, business leaders, and thought leaders. I've learned so many valuable insights from these conversations that I decided to distill it down into 7 mindset shifts that can help you reimagine your role as a leader. You'll also get a playbook with exercises to help you put these principles into action. To get your free playbook, just go to mollyfletcher.com/mindset shifts. Again, that's mollyfletcher.com/mindset shifts. Now back to the show. I would imagine there's been a lot of moments where you've had to give him some pretty tough feedback and be pretty direct. Guys like Tom don't have a lot of people give them really tough feedback. How has that worked for you? And I would imagine that's strengthened in light of the love that you have for each other and your relationship. But maybe early on in the journey, how did that work?
I think back when we had, you can call it a come to Jesus meeting one time where he something that I particularly didn't like. And we talked about it a few times and things really weren't changing. And I said, you know what, Tommy, like, you're making this really hard for me. Like, you're creating a lot more work for me than it really needs, which isn't fair to me. So I'm just going to politely excuse myself. You can continue to do what you're doing. You're just going to have to do it without me. And, he really then looked at that and thought, you know what, Alex, you're right. I apologize. And he never did it again. And it was never an issue again. So I think, again, it's being able to have open communication, open and honest communication. We always talk about being, Tommy's taught me that, there's the 3 C's of communication. It needs to be clear, right? Clear, current communication. Like, it needs to be not something that happened a month ago or a year ago. Like, you don't bring up dirty laundry. To be clear, and it needs to be current. And I think that successful relationships are about having clear, current communication. Like, what's affecting your relationship right now at the moment? Like, hey, this is really bothering me and I want to talk about this. And so we do. And he does the same thing. Like, when I do something that bothers him, he'll bring it up right away. When he does something that bothers me, I bring it up right away. And we teach our clients to do the same thing. So when they have a relationship with their body coaches, it's the same type of relationship. Like, we want them to take responsibility for their health care. So if we're doing something that they don't like, we want them to speak up and express it and say, hey, I don't quite understand this, or this doesn't quite feel right, or why are we doing it this way? It's a great open communication. So we call it, clear current communication.
As a sports agent, I saw, the best athletes in the world fiercely protect their energy, where it goes, where it doesn't go, who gets it, who doesn't. From the outside looking in, that seems to be such a big component of what you do, of what Tom does, and certainly what I saw with the best athletes. Can you talk to me a little bit about your approach as it relates to energy?
Yeah, you mean the storage of energy?
The human energy, right? And I've heard you say, right, and Tom, where your concentration goes, your energy flows, and that's what grows.
Right. Yeah. So again, everything comes at a cost. So I would say, look, if we're going to have these many outputs, which in professional sports or even in a high level business setting, there's a lot of outputs. You have to have an equivalent amount of inputs. And so you decide what the inputs are and you write them down. So you tell me what an input is. So I will always ask our clients, give me what an input would be. Some people would say like, oh, you know what, it's reading a book, or it could be a multitude of things, right? It's very personal to everyone. But I always ask my clients to write their inputs down. And then I, as their body coach, hold them accountable to their inputs. Because I already know that they're going to put outputs. These are type A people, right? Like they're very successful. They're going all the time. And, the reality is they can burn out just like everybody else can. And if they don't have inputs and they're not reminded of their inputs, they just burn out, like so many high profile people do. And so what we do to maintain our energy and to keep our energy going all the time is we make sure that we have an equal amount of inputs to our outputs.
Right. And that helps you offset demand exceeding capacity.
That's right. Yeah. And then it helps with the amplifier getting enough rest and recovery. Like he just knows like, hey, by 9:30 to late, you've got to be asleep. Like I need you to recover from today's activities so that we are not, so that our batteries are full for tomorrow's activities, because we already know what tomorrow's output's going to be.
Right. Sure. Last year we saw Tom go, in a New Jersey, right? For the first time in his career, new team, but the same result. What was his mindset going from the Patriots to the Bucs?
I will say it was a challenging year. It was challenging at the beginning. A lot of mental energy went into the decision for him. And starting, with COVID and, it was just a different year. So that's what made it a little challenging. But I think with it, we focused on what could be exciting. Like, he had amazing teammates, amazing coaches, amazing owners. Like we focused on all the things that were positive about the situation that could have been really tough. It kind of started out a little rocky, but we continued to stay the course and we continued to focus on what we knew we could accomplish. And as a result, he was able to be a big help and with what the team was able to accomplish in succeeding and winning a Super Bowl.
Is there like a favorite, Alex, Tom's story, right? One maybe that captures his mindset. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty, but is there a couple favorite ones?
His ability to get in the moment at the moment is amazing. So, for example, it'll be the day before a game. We'll talk about, the game a little bit. We'll talk about how he's feeling. We'll get his body prepared. Then we'll start to think about what he would need to do mentally. And then on game day, when we're doing our prep on game day, he's in a different space. Mentally he's different. His facial expressions are different. His body language is different. I mean, he is hyper-focused. And he has an amazing ability to hyper-focus on what he needs to be hyper-focused with in that moment. Like his mind never deviates from what he's focused on. And that's really an amazing thing. So many people can think that they're really focused on something, like, okay, I've got to go accomplish this. And they get focused on it. But as soon as a variable comes in, it deviates from what they're focused on, they lose their focus. He never does. And it's almost like he can compartmentalize time. And so he up for the next 4 hours or 6 hours, from the time he's going to be at the stadium to kick off to the end of the game, like he knows where his mental energy needs to go. And he compartmentalizes it into that space, and he really doesn't think about anything else.
Is that a result of the mental training in large part?
Yeah, I do think that. I mean, he works at it. I mean, I think some of it's innate. Like I think with a lot of really uber successful people, there's some things that are just innate in them. But he's so intelligent and he has such a great memory and ability to, he remembers how things felt during a certain, like he remembers his feelings and emotions from the losses, so he doesn't like those, right? Nobody likes those feelings, but he really doesn't like those feelings. So he doesn't want to go back there. So he's like, okay, what do I need to do to make sure I don't go back there? Oh, I need to stay hyper-focused. Like I can't be interrupted from this time to this time. And he's very hyper-focused then. And he really doesn't deviate. It's remarkable.
Yeah, I love how you talk about feeling better versus getting better, which is a huge, huge difference. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. So when we started to focus on his body and with our client, one of the things that we talked about is the difference between feeling better and getting better. So, when you have an injury or you come in for, your typical rehabilitation, everything is always geared for you feeling better as opposed to getting better. And I'm always like, no, we need to get better as opposed to feeling better. Like anybody can feel better. Like you can not do something for a week and start to feel better, but you never really get better. Whereas like hamstrings, for example, become a chronic issue for athletes because they, do stuff wrong. They get good at doing it bad. They injure their hamstring. They take time off. It feels better. They go back on the field and it, strains again. So I always say there's a difference between feeling better and getting better. So you need to put the time in to get better and the understanding of what it takes to get better as opposed to just feel better.
Sure. Alex, we've talked a lot about Tom, but TB12 is really about anyone, right? Achieving and sustaining peak performance. How does all of that, right, apply to the average person?
Again, when Tom and I started TB12, really was to help empower anyone, again, to perform their best and to be free. I think the one thing that, time doesn't know or pandemics don't know or anything is pain. Like people get in pain, whether it's from sitting around or doing the wrong thing or aging or whatever. And so they start to limit the things that they really want to do because of their pain. So our message to everyone is like, age is just a number, like, never cop to age. We always ask all of our clients to, again, define what peak performance means to them, because it means different things to different people. So define what peak performance means to you, and then work to accomplish that. And so the way that we work to accomplish that is to help people, one, get out of pain if they're in pain. So because I think if you're not physically fit, you're not going to be emotionally stable. If you're not emotionally stable, you're not going to be mentally or spiritually sound. And if you're not mentally or spiritually sound, then you're not going to be physically fit. So, it's important for us to say, okay, let's get you physically fit. So you're feeling good physically. And when you're feeling good physically, you're going to begin to feel good emotionally because you're now not focused on pain. When you're feeling good emotionally, it's easier to begin to find a rhythm or a balance, spiritually or mentally, which then is just going to encourage you to continue to be good physically.
Alex, you help so many people with peak performance, from Tom to Gronk to you name it, and a lot of business people and just people in general. What is peak performance to you?
Peak performance to me is the ability to do what you love doing for as long as you want to do it.
That's awesome. At TB12, you have a winning mindset, right? It's a set of 6 principles that obviously you and Tom live by and the other athletes you work with live by. Can you kind of high level those for us?
Yeah, I would say, like at the beginning, we talked about how at the core is you have the winning mindset, right? Never accepting limits, relentless determination, accountability. Like that's where it starts. And then from there, it branches out to pliability, right? Treatment to ensure that your muscles are long, unrestricted, and really ready for anything. And then outside of that, we talk about the importance of hydration, adequate fluids with the right amount of electrolytes, nutrients to keep your mind and your muscles firing at 100%. Then nutrition, right? The proper food, smart supplementation, so it'll fuel your body and brain. And then we go to functional strength and conditioning, which are going to be innovative exercises, whether it's resistant bands or body weight or things like that to be able to keep your body strong. It differentiates with age. So, different age groups are going to have a different program. But I would think that those would be the pillars of what TB12 and the TB12 method is built around.
Sure. Yeah. And I love how you guys talk about stay positive, always give your best effort, right? Accept no limits, learn from failure, right? Develop a growth mindset. And stay determined. That's good stuff. Where do people find out more about TB12?
Our website, they can go to tb12sports.com, and they can read up all about the information there. They can also, get the TB12 method book and read about, our method and some of Tom's mindset in the book, and about all the other 6 pillars that we have that are associated with the TB12 method.
Awesome. Alex, we end with rapid fire, so I'm going to hit you with a couple, and you just tell me, you just hit me back with what comes up. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Your go-to healthy meal or snack?
Ooh, I'm going to say I'm big plant-based, so I would say 80% of my plate is going to be plant-based. So there's always going to be some form of vegetables on my plate. So I would say salads. I'm a big salad guy, and I will always and maybe sometimes put some fish or a little chicken on my plate.
One habit that's made the greatest impact on your life?
Oh, prayer and meditation.
A book you recommend most often?
The 4 Agreements.
Most memorable career moment?
Ooh. I would say, Tom winning a Super Bowl at 40 and becoming the, Super Bowl MVP when nobody thought he could do it at 40.
What's one thing on your bucket list?
I'm a big adrenaline junkie. So I love speed. So one of the things would probably to be able to get into a NASCAR and drive NASCAR would be a big bucket list.
Awesome.
Item for me.
Awesome. What are you reading, watching, or listening to right now?
Usually the things I read are all, right now I'm currently reading a lot of papers that have different data on new innovative ideas and things that are coming out in the health and wellness space. So I read a lot of that to make sure that, the data is what they say it is and that it's evidence-based, and see if it's something we can apply. So I read that a lot. That takes up most of my time. But I would say that the reason why I love and tell people to read the 4 Agreements, because it's a quick read. It helps me come back to center with personality traits that I need to exemplify in order to maintain, what I feel to maintain the success I've had.
So the show's called Game Changers. So one last question. What game changer or who inspires you and why?
Wow. So many.
I mean, if I was you, man, I'm thinking it's your wife or Tom, right?
Well, my wife is always an inspiration to me. So,
Good answer.
That's every day, Molly. But
right.
My wife, my children are always an inspiration to me. I think I really look up to people that have really come from nothing. Like, that's very inspiring to me. Like, I think it's easy when you started at a high place to maintain a high place. But when you start at a low place and you're able to get to a high place, that's really inspiring to me. So I love stories of people that have just come up through the grind. They've really had to express a lot of grit and determination and drive, and they've grinded it out. And that's very inspiring to me. So I love stories like that.
Mm-hmm. You love the undrafted guy that shows up at the front door ready to get after it.
I love it. That's why I always remind Tom where he was drafted.
6th rounder, baby. Hey, Alex, thank you so much. This is great stuff, and super grateful for your time and for the work that you do and the lives that you change, both on and off the field. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for everything you're doing for everyone.
That was a pretty cool look inside of peak performance from a bit of a different perspective. Here are 3 of my favorite takeaways from my conversation with Alex. Number 1, don't feel better, get better. The way Alex differentiated this was one of my big takeaways. Are you focused on feeling better or getting better? Big difference. Wake up and get better every day. Number 2, remember the 3 C's. Clear, current communication. This is key to building solid, long-term connection. And number 3, I'll leave you with the 6 principles behind the TB12 winning mindset. Stay positive. Always give your best effort. Accept no limits. Learn from failure. Develop a growth mindset. And lastly, love this one, stay determined. Thanks, as always, for listening to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. There you can listen to previous episodes and leave us a review, which helps other people find out about the show. This episode was edited and sound designed by the team at Sound On Studios. You can find out more about their work at soundonsoundoff.com. Check it out. For more about me, visit mollyfletcher.com. Until next time, stay curious and be bold.